This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross. My guests, Glen Hansard and Markéta Irglová, are the stars of the film Once. He plays a Dublin street musician. She plays a young mother and pianist who recently emigrated from the Czech Republic. She befriends him on the street. They start writing and playing songs together and realize they're kindred spirits. This low-budget indie film became a big success. Hansard and Irglová won an Oscar this year for Best Original Song, and in the process of making the film, Hansard and Irglová became a couple and a music duo. They perform under the name The Swell Season and are currently on an American tour. Their movie Once is out on DVD. Glen Hansard is also known for his work in the band The Frames. The writer and director of Once, John Carney, used to be in The Frames. Let's start with the Oscar-winning song from Once. This is Falling Slowly.
And games that never amount to more than they're meant will play themselves out. Take this sinking boat and point it home. We've still got time. Raise your hopeful voice. You have a choice. You make it now. Falling slowly.
Glen Hansard, Markéta Irglová, welcome to Fresh Air. Congratulations on the Oscar and all the success you've had with Once. You co-wrote Falling Slowly. Had you ever written a song together before writing for the film?
No, that was actually the first song we wrote together, and it was one of those things where I'd been working on the song, and I wasn't really sure where I was going with it. All I had was, was the verse, and I had an idea for the chorus, and it was only when I sat down with Mar and I played her the idea, because I was talking about a harmony in the chorus, and she said, well, what if you take the lower one, or you take the higher one and I'll take the lower one, and on the moment where it goes, we've still got time, and she and it was for me, that was like the key of what made the song suddenly work, and then so I wrote the chorus with Mar, and then I really felt like we had a solid song in our hand, and it was something that I could give to John and feel confident with.
Glen, you pointed out that the movie was not written with you in mind as the performer, or with Markéta in mind. Cillian Murphy, who is best known to me through his role in Breakfast on Pluto, was supposed to be the star of the film, but he had to back out at the last minute. So I guess that's how you ended up being cast yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that what happened was that Cillian was involved in the project all along, and Cillian likes the Frames, and so he was happy to sing my songs. But I think some of the songs I turned in, I think Cillian probably felt a little bit... Cillian's a great singer, but I think he felt a bit unprepared for some of the... Because the songs that John chose were some of the more dynamically, vocally challenging songs, because I just gave John a bunch of songs and he chose which ones he liked, which ones he didn't. And I think Cillian got a little bit sensitive about, maybe possibly about the idea of singing a few of these songs and being able to sort of do them justice. And I remember making the suggestion that I was like, I'll change the keys, I'll make it work. Because for me, having the job of writing the songs, I just wanted to keep my gig. And so I was like, I'll change the keys, I'll do whatever Cillian needs to in order to make these songs work. And I think possibly what happened was that Cillian just got offered another job and then maybe took it. I think that Cillian had done maybe enough low-budget Irish films, even though Once was originally budgeted at about 2 million, which is nowhere near a low-budget movie in Ireland. And because Cillian's name was attached to it, producers were happy to back the film up. But once Cillian pulled out, John was left in a very, I guess he was kind of stranded, because the producers pulled out once Cillian pulled out, and then suddenly this project, which was about to film in a month or two, suddenly had no money. And this is kind of where things got exciting for us, because John had already cast Mar, Cillian had backed out on him, the producers had backed out on him, but he still had a crew booked and he still had a shoot day. And so he had to sort of figure out, do I drop this project and move on to another idea I had, or do I try to make this work somehow? And we all sat down together, because I was involved in the project as a songwriter. We all sat down together and we sort of I guess we all tried to figure out what to do. And I got really excited about the idea of making the film as cheaply as possible. And it also meant that we could, we figured out how to do it. So we wouldn't use lights. We'd shoot, instead of shooting, there was talk of originally shooting the film on film. Let's shoot it on DV. And let's, instead of hiring the cameras, let's just buy 2 cameras. Let's shoot the whole film without permits. Because in Dublin, like in most cities, if you put a tripod on the street, you need to have a permit for it, and therefore you need to have security. And let's do this whole thing without any of that. Let's just do it all handheld, and let's keep the crew. Let's cut the crew in half, so that we don't need, in terms of costume. Let's just do all the costumes, or let's just bring our own clothes. Let's do this. Let's just do this thing super minimalist.
And let's hire someone real cheap like Glen Hansard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that element. Yeah. And let's just get me to do it. Let's just get me mate to do it. And when John approached me to do it, I was kind of nervous. I must admit, I didn't really like the idea because I just didn't feel like I could pull it off. But then John kind of put to me, he said, look, no one's going to sing these songs like you do because you wrote them. He says, I'm forced into the choice of having, 2 actors who can probably half sing, or 2 musicians who can half act. And he says, I'd rather, if it's a musical film, I'd rather have 2 musicians who can half act, and I'll get a performance out of you. And he says, as long as the music's convincing, I think people are going to believe it. So that was kind of his gamble. And he took us on. There was no screen tests. There was no rehearsals. We went into the film on the first day, and John had no idea if we were going to be able to pull it off.
Markéta, you were cast before Glen was. How did you get the part? You hadn't acted before.
No, well, John Carney, the director, approached Glen about this, as you know, about the idea for this film, and throughout the years they'd met many years in cafes over teas and coffees and discussed the idea of the film, and when the project was getting closer to happening, John said to Glen, well, the only thing is I have Cillian Murphy for the male part, but I can't find a woman for the female part. I have trouble finding this woman because I want it to be an Eastern European woman who can sing and play piano and act. And would you know any people, because you travel a lot? And Glen said, well, yeah, I know a girl from Czech Republic, and she does play piano and sing, and I'm sure she could pull off the acting, but the thing is she's only 17, and John was looking for a 35-year-old woman originally. And so John kind of thought that 17 years old was too young, but he decided to meet me anyway, and so I just got on the plane to Dublin from Prague and met John, the director, and just kind of played a few tunes on the piano for him, and that was my audition, really. He didn't get me to read any lines or anything. He just cast me right then and there. And that was it. I was part of the project.
You were 17 when the movie was shot?
Yeah.
Wow,
That's right.
You don't look it. You really look older in it.
I know, it's funny. It's even now people meet me in person, and they tell me I look much younger than in the film, and it's ironic because I'm now older than I was in the film. So it's weird. They must have done it, and I wasn't wearing any makeup or anything. I don't know whether it was just the clothes or the camera making me look older. It's a funny thing.
I think it was the fact that you embodied the character of, because I think the character was meant to be like 22 or 23, so Mar embodied that character, and I think maybe it was just believable.
Let's hear another song that you co-wrote together for once, and this is If You Want Me. And Glen, why don't you describe how this song is used in the film?
Well, there was one. John wanted to have one song in the film that was basically a throwback or a salute to the classic musical. We decided a couple of things in the beginning. We said, whenever there's a song in this film, let's have the entire song. And also, whenever there's a song in this film, let's have it be absolutely live in the moment, so that you're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes, you're not putting anybody on, you're playing the song in front of them, so that there isn't this whole idea of playback and, then you'd mime. So John had this idea for a song, and he really loved the Alanis Morissette song, India. Do you know that song goes, God bless, thank you, India, thank you, terror, thank you, disillusionment. Do you know, he gave us a tape of that song, and he says, I want you to write that song, but I don't want you to, because he said, I'd love to use that song, but I know I probably wouldn't be allowed, and I want this song, I want all the songs to be original. So the idea was that Mar's character, the batteries would go in her CD player, and that she would basically sing over music that I would have supposedly written. And it was going to be John wanted basically just to do a Singing in the Rain moment where it was a real musical moment. And so we hired a crane, and basically we just walked up the street with Mar that whole evening. And I think it really does work in the film. But that is the one moment where we're miming.
Yeah, but it's also a moment where you get to actually know something about the girl, because I think through the songs that the male character plays, you get to know something about his personality, you know, something that you probably wouldn't get to know about a person in one and a half hour. And so you get that little chance with that song that the girl sings as well, which works very well, I think.
So let's hear it, If You Want Me, and this will give us a chance to hear Markéta's voice. This is Glen Hansard and Markéta Irglová from the soundtrack of their film Once.
When I get really lonely and the distance causes only silence, I think of you smiling with pride in your eyes, a lover that sighs. If you want me, satisfy me. If you want me, satisfy me.
That's If You Want Me from the soundtrack of the film Once. My guest co-wrote the song and also starred in the film. Glen Hansard and Markéta Irglová are my guests. Since neither of you were really actors when you started making Once, although Glen, you had a part in the Commitments as a member of the band, did you go seeking advice from people about how to act or how to behave in front of a camera? Did you just learn from doing it? And if you got advice, like, what's the best thing that you were each told that actually helped you?
Well, the thing that I was told, and I can't remember who told me right now, somebody said to me, just remember that Marlon Brando was always Marlon Brando. He wasn't, like, the reason people hired him to be in films is because he was Marlon Brando. I kind of like the idea that no matter what character you're playing, no matter whether you embody it or not, and there are many different styles of acting. Of course, there are many different styles, but this was the thing that that resonated with me most, was the fact that just be yourself and embody the character. And I think that for me, that meant that my range as an actor was probably quite limited. And let's face it, I was pretty much playing myself in this film. I am a street musician. I was a street musician. I fixed bicycles and not Hoovers. John changed that detail, I guess. When I went to the bank to get my first loan for the frames, the bank manager took out his guitar and played me a song. So there are many details in this guy's life that are very similar to my own. So I guess for myself, it wasn't so difficult to embody this guy. I think if I was given a more challenging role, I might find it a lot more difficult. But and as well, we were making this film. I was making this film with Mar, who was a good friend of mine, and also with John Carney, who was in my band, who was a very close friend of mine. So I felt very, very comfortable with these people. It felt like a bunch of friends making a film over the weekend, more than it felt like being involved in a big artistic challenge. The challenge for us was the writing the songs and getting them finished. So the acting really took a second place, thank God, in all of this.
I want to play a scene from the beginning of Once, and this is a scene where, Glen, you're playing on the street for money, but no one's paying any attention to you at all, and until Markéta, you walk over and start asking him questions about himself and the music. Here's the scene.
This song you just played, you wrote it?
Working on it.
It's not an established song?
No, it's not an established song.
How come you're not playing during daytime? I see you every day.
You know, during the day, people want to hear songs they know, just songs that they recognise. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't make any money. I play these songs at night. They wouldn't listen.
I listen.
Yeah, but you give me 10 cents.
Well, you do it for money then? Why don't you get a job in a shop?
I'll have a job in a shop. Listen, I'm going to get back to this, yeah? Nice to meet you.
Who'd you write this song for, please?
No one.
Where is she?
She's gone.
She's dead?
No, she's not dead. She's gone.
You love her still?
Jesus, man.
You're over her. Rubbish. No one write this song is over her. I'm telling you. You play this marvelous song to her, you get her back.
I don't want her back.
Glen Hansard and Markéta Irglová in a scene from Once. Glen, you started out off as a street musician when you were in your teens. You dropped out of high school to play on the streets. Where did you choose to play? Like, what was a good street for you in Dublin?
Well, for me, Grafton Street was it was a bit like in Dublin, if you can imagine, if you know, the microcosm of your life, I suppose. For me, I lived on the north side of the city, so Grafton Street was on the south side of the city. And that for me made most sense, because it meant that I wouldn't bump into anybody from school, and that I wouldn't bump into any of my mother's friends, or my mother indeed, because my mother was a fruit seller on Moore Street, which is on the north side of the city, and I wanted to get as far away from anybody I knew as possible. So I went over to Grafton Street, and also Grafton Street was kind of the more posh part of Dublin, so the chances of me having a career or getting beyond just being a street musician I had better chances, if you like, on the south side of the city, because that's kind of where all the artists lived. And you know, so I went over there, and it was for me, it was the beginning of a whole new education. I mean, I left school at 13. I went over there. The day I left school, I went busking, and what started was I met a man who sold magazines on the street. His name was Pete, and Pete was he prided himself on the fact that he was a Dylanologist. You know, he loved Dylan and loved everything about.
Yeah.
And because I was such a Dylan fan, this guy took me seriously, because I was playing Dylan songs that weren't necessarily the ones from the Greatest Hits record. And so this guy took an interest in me, and I guess took me under his wing. And I remember going and living with him for a while, and he took me around to like poetry readings, and pretty much from there on, I remember meeting this lady, Philippa Garner, who was a kind of a famous painter in Ireland, and she took me out to her house in Kildare, which was in the countryside. She lived in an old converted schoolhouse that she had rebuilt, and I went and lived with her for 2 years, and really a whole new education began. I remember staying at Seamus Heaney's house when I was a kid, and getting to hang out with poets and other musicians was really the basis of my artistic beginnings.
So what's the best thing that happened to you on the streets?
Well, for me, I guess, overall, it was my education. I learned how to sing on Grafton Street. I learned how to entertain. When you're on the street, you're a still point. You know, you're part of the architecture. You're a still. And if you stand still on any street, in any city, in any country in the world, if you stand still long enough, every single person in that city will pass you by. So, like, you know, I'd be busking and Van Morrison would walk past as I was singing a Van Morrison song, or, you know, Bono would go by, or...
Is that true?
You know,
Really? They'd go
yeah,
by?
absolutely.
Okay, so Van Morrison is walking by. What do you do? Do you say, excuse me?
Not at all, no.
No?
With someone like Van, you would just give him his space. I mean, and actually, ironically, the reason I guess he was passing by was because myself and my friend were busking together, and we were singing Van, because Van songs are amazing to busk. So one day we were busking, playing one of his songs, and he passed by. But actually, the irony was that we were busking enough money to go see him that night. So actually, we ended up busking up enough money to go see him. And the same thing happened to us with you too. We were busking up the money to go see them one time, and we saw them the same day, which is very interesting.
Now, Markéta, you grew up in a family surrounded by music, because your father, correct me if I'm wrong, your father promoted music festivals in Czechoslovakia when you were growing up?
Well, my parents are those kind of people that my father is constantly searching for finding something that he can be excited about doing, and so he used to be a vice mayor at one point. That was when I was very small, and then he decided to leave that job because the town was too corrupt, and to found his own newspaper so that he could have more of a voice. And so him and my mother have been doing this newspaper, writing the articles for it, and doing that for the past 15 years. And after that, he kind of he's got a wine shop because they're both lovers of wine, and beside that he was kind of taking care of a few bands and organizing gigs for them. So the two of them are very active in their life. You know, they're constantly looking for things to do to be able to get behind, and so one of the things they did get excited about was just kind of having different people coming in and out of their life, and having them over at their house, and a lot of those kind of people were musicians, and so without him having an official job of a music promoter, that's what he kind of does in a funny way. So yes, music was always a big thing in my house, and there's tons of CDs on the shelves, and I would have been growing up, going to sleep with with Joni Mitchell songs and Leonard Cohen songs. So yes, music was always a huge part of my family.
How did you both meet?
Me and Glenn?
Yeah.
Well, it was a case of my father helping a man that lives in Ireland get this Irish band over to Czech Republic and Slovakia for a few gigs. And he was the guy that would kind of help out on the Czech side, because he obviously speaks Czech and English, so he'll be able to communicate and get venues to be helpful. And so he basically helped organise a few gigs that the Frames had around the area. And because he did do that, when the band came over, they just kind of came to our house and we organised a party for them in our garden. And that was where we met, basically around a fire, playing songs and singing along. And my mother cooked this big feast. So we met in a really lovely way, where Glenn my family would basically invite the whole bunch, which was about 12 people, over to the house and befriend Glenn and the band. So then Glenn would just keep coming to the house because of my mother's cooking and stuff. So it's a very funny way of us meeting. But throughout the years, we would have become friends.
So, Glenn, when you dropped out of school at the age of, 14, so that you could perform on the streets, what did your parents think of that?
Well, I'm very lucky in that my mother was very, very liberal. She grew up in a very, very tight household where she had to be home at a certain time, and she had 12 brothers and sisters, and I guess if the family had to keep everybody, herd them together, I guess, if you like. So my mother grew up in the 60s, and so during that time she wanted basically to give her kids the freedom that she never had. So my mother was like very, very liberal. She said to me, anytime you need, if you want to, when I came home to her and said, Mara, I really want to do music, my mother just said, well, do it then. And she said, well, do it, and if you're going to do it properly. So go and earn a living from it and do it and getting really involved in it. So I was lucky, and my dad was I guess my dad was one of those guys who was he worked hard, but he was a hard drinking man and supported us in whatever we wanted to do, but didn't really play much of a role in our lives except to say, yeah, fair play to you, son, go for it, So my dad was was on board with it too. I was very, very lucky. I mean, my headmaster in school, my head teacher, he was a great guy. I was in his office so many times. And we talked, and I guess he was a smart guy. He figured out that music was the one subject I really enjoyed talking about, and because he was in his spare time, he was a DJ, and so myself and himself would talk about Dylan and Cohen and Neil Young and all the stuff that really impassioned me. And he basically said to me one day, he called me down to the office and he says, Glenn, you know what? You're in this school, you're not learning a thing, you're frustrating all of the teachers, and I know you love music. So I have an idea. Why don't you go, take your guitar, go over to Grafton Street or go to any street you want, but start your musical career at the very bottom today. He said, go and take your guitar out. And if in a year you're not enjoying it or it's not working out for you, come back to school and I'll figure out a way of getting you back into class and you can continue your education. He says, but I don't think that your education is going anywhere. He says, you can tell me all the musicians who played on John Wesley Harding, or you can tell me who produced the first 2 Leonard Cohen records, but you can't tell me the square root of 9. And he says, so you're not really very good to us here, and I'd like to see you succeed. So he sent me home that day to take my guitar and go to the Grafton Street. And when I went home, I said to my mother, I dropped my school bag in the hall and I said to my mother, Ma, I'm gonna start my career as a musician. And my mother was like, what, really? And I was like, yeah. She says, well, go for it, son, and good luck.
Oh, that worked out. And Markéta, how did your parents feel when you, at the age of 17, took a break from school, left home, went to another country to make a movie?
Well, first of all, like Glenn's parents, my parents are very liberal themselves, so they, it's not like they ever restricted me much in whatever I wanted to do. But I guess there was, they were always concerned ever since Glenn came into my life as a musician who left school at 13. I think they were always concerned that I would just forget about school and try walking his footsteps, and they were only concerned about that because they wanted me to have something to fall back on in case music didn't work out or something. But at the same time, I think I always had a very good sense of that if I was quite sensible at home, and if I didn't get into too much trouble, then I'd have that freedom, because they would trust me and they'd kind of know that I'll be all right on my own. And so I stayed out of trouble, and I did all my homework in school, and for that I had the freedom to travel and miss out on school at times. So it was great, and they did, and my parents are very supportive, so they would have never kind of stood between me and my dreams or anything like that. So I'm very thankful to them for that.
Now, in the movie, it's clear that you're kind of made for each other, but you're both in or have been in other relationships, and you're kind of headed in different directions, and the relationship doesn't really work out. And I think viewers are really rooting for you to become a couple in the film. I understand that you've become a couple in real life, even though you don't quite make it in the film. And that must be really interesting for you, because people who meet you and who've seen the movie already have a sense of you as having this like very special connection.
Yeah, that's true. And in a way, I think, because we meet some people and they're like, I was really happy with the way you ended the film. I thought that was really great that it ended in this way. And then we meet people and they're genuinely angry with us for not having the characters kiss in the end. And so for them, we kind of console them and we're like, well, we're living out the sequel if you like, and we're together now. So they feel a bit better about themselves then. It's funny.
I want to ask you about another scene from Once. There's a great scene in what I think is a pub. It almost looks like a living room, but I think it's actually like a small pub. And everybody's kind of eating dinner and drinking. And the rule of the game here is that you have to be able to sing to be in on this dinner. And people just kind of alternate singing. And there's a kind of middle-aged woman and a middle-aged man, or slightly older man, who sing a few bars in this sequence. And they have really interesting voices. And I was wondering, like, who are they? And is this based on a real pub in Dublin?
Well, actually, that room is where me and Mara live. That's our flat.
Oh.
And because we didn't have money to hire a venue, we decided to have a party in our flat.
No wonder it looks like an apartment. Okay.
Yeah, so that's our place. That's where we live. And also the guy I was telling you about earlier on, the first person I met, the Dylanologist in Grafton Street, that's Pete, and he's the guy who sings.
Oh.
And then the woman who sings is my mother.
No.
Yeah, that's my mother, Catherine. So, and again, how we did it was, instead of trying to hire a room and put lots of extras in it, we just threw a party and invited all our friends over and filmed it.
I really liked her voice. There was something vaguely Marianne Faithfull-ish about it.
Yeah. Oh, well, interestingly,
the older Marianne Faithfull.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, Marianne Faithfull used to live in that flat also, which you might have somehow picked up on. Yeah. We're very lucky in that we live. One of the other people that I met when I was younger was Marina Guinness, who's part of the Guinness family in Ireland. And Ireland doesn't have royalty, but if we did have royalty, it would have to be the Guinness family, because they're such a strong and powerful family in Ireland in a very nice way. And of course we all admire them because we drink their product constantly. It's an amazing thing. But I'm really glad you pointed out the guy and the woman, because the guy is the guy I was talking about, who took me on board, and I spent a lot of time with him when I was younger, and of course my mother.
Now we have to play that scene.
Great to see you here. Can you sing? You can't sing, you're out.
There's one request I'll ask of you when your liberty gained. Remember Mitchell far away, a convict bound and chained.
Mine that once held this heart of mine.
That's a scene from Once, which stars my guests, Glen Hansard and Markéta Irglová, who are both musicians and songwriters who are performing together now on tour. Did your mother sing a lot when you were growing up?
Yeah, my mother sang constantly when we were kids, my father. My mother used to win, she won a bunch of competitions when we were kids, in pubs, and my mother, of course, never took singing as seriously as, say, I did, but, and my grandfather was an opera singer, and my grandfather sang. I remember my great-grandfather sang in the same competition as James Joyce, and beat him, apparently, in an opera competition a long time ago. So music's definitely been in my family.
So, wow, your lives have just been so changed by the movie. It's just, I mean, in every way, in terms of your performances, in terms of the fact that you're now a couple and you're living together. I'm sure you just never expected that.
Not at all. I mean, it's been a very, very serendipitous, I suppose. It's been a very, very interesting and powerful chapter in my life, for sure. And, yeah, exactly. It's like, does life imitate art? Does art imitate life? With Once, it definitely, the lines are definitely blurred, and I really like that about it.
Since Dylan figures into your story here, Glenn, particularly your story, I think maybe we'll end with "You Ain't Going Nowhere" from from the soundtrack of the Dylan movie, the movie about Dylan. I'm Not Here, the fictional movie about Dylan. So you recorded "You Ain't Going Nowhere" for it. Now I know Dylan was a big influence on you, Glenn. You sang Dylan songs when you were busking as a teenager on the streets. The Frames opened for Dylan on some tour or another, so I imagine you got to meet him.
Yeah.
Did he have much to say? Is he meetable? I mean, is he accessible as a person?
Well, I'm very, very lucky in that I got to spend, some time in Bob's company, and he's one of those men. I don't even feel very comfortable talking about him because he's just so. For me, he's just a great. And I've been lucky in my life in that I've met all the people that I've really adored. I've somehow managed to meet, and I feel great about that. And so spending a bit of time in a master's company gives one a great sense of humility. And so all I can say is that I definitely wasn't disappointed. I spoke to Bob about Woody Guthrie, and that was, for me, was, what was really great about that was it was two artists speaking about another artist, and that was for me was the best way the conversation could flow, because what do you say to the man who's heard every different approach? And when I met him, I didn't really know what to say. I guess I was lucky, and what just fell out of my mouth was, I said, meeting you, Bob, is a bit like what it must have been like when you met Woody. And the conversation could have died right there, but it didn't. It went on, and Bob talked about Woody, and I talked about Woody. I knew just enough to keep a conversation going with him, so it was, for me, it's been a wonderful experience being in his company.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for talking with us, and congratulations on your lives together and on the success of Once and your music. Thank you.
Thank you very much.